Hello, and welcome everybody to another episode of Pod Strickland. I'm your host, Shwin, and this is episode 352. I am not joined, as always, by my co-host, Prev, who is busy with work like a loser, but he is here in spirit. But I am joined by first-time guest of the pod. You can find him on Twitter at TerranovaNoah. Noah also has a YouTube channel where he does a lot of work about many players in the NBA, analyzing them, and he also does some draft work as well. Noah, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good. I just uploaded a video about an hour before we got on. It's the thick of the NBA season, so this is like November, December. Those are like the big months on YouTube. When it comes to just getting as much out as possible, like November, because that's like the real big start. Like you can get like your reactionary, like not for me reactionary. Like I do a lot of breakdown stuff, but still, it's still early season, a lot can change, and then you can reflect on it. But December is like the biggest month. I'm just getting ready for that because of all the Christmas ads that roll in. You make so much money off that. So, I try to get a video out every day of the month. I usually get about 25, and then I get to Christmas, and I'm just mentally wiped.
And then you get to watch basketball all day on Christmas.
Yeah, but I love it. Like it's something that I started as a hobby, but it eventually I'm reaching a point where I realize like if I really work at this over the next few months, I can make this like my full-time job. And just thinking about like the fact that I can make real money off of talking about a sport that I love and also going through the video editing process that I just love, which is the main reason I do YouTube. At my core, I'm a video creator. I just love that process. So knowing that I'm in a position to maybe do this for a living one day, like it really pushes me all the time.
Yeah, well, look, if anybody's not familiar, let me tell you, he literally is putting out a video a day. So,
Yeah.
before we get started, I do have to make a few announcements. The first being that the Strickland has an Instagram. Check that out. That is at the Strick.land on Instagram. Posting all kinds of new content on there. The Strickland also has a YouTube channel, which is not as prolific as Noah's. You maybe watch this podcast there. If you are, you've not done so already, please hit like, leave us a comment, and subscribe to the channel. That would be a huge help to us. The Strickland also has merchandise that is available on our website. You can find that at www.thestrick.land. There's a link that'll take you to the merchandise store. We got all kinds of cool stuff on there: t-shirts, sweatshirts, hats, coffee mugs, water bottles, you name it, we've got it. And finally, the Strickland has a Patreon, which you can subscribe to. There are a number of different tiers. There's a $6 tier that gets you access to Pod Strickland's podcast that I host every Friday with Prez. You also get access to Takes from Obvious Bozos, our newest podcast hosted by Andrew Steele, a.k.a. Doug, along with Zach Blatter. You also get access to the Strickland Discord where the conversation never stops. There are further tiers. There's a $9 tier that gets you access to Strick and Roll, my solo pod where I rant and rave about the Knicks even more. You also get access to wonderful premium articles by Matthew Myrna, one of the best in the business. And now you get access to Strictly NFL, our newest pod, which is about, you guessed it, the NFL. That is hosted by Constantine Metricos and Jeffrey Rasmussen. There are further tiers. There's a $15 tier, $30 tier, $50 tier, and $100 tier. This comes with a variety of additional benefits, like listening to pod recordings, merchandise discounts, and even potentially co-hosting a podcast alongside yours truly one day, whether you choose to subscribe or not. None of this would be possible without you, and none of this would be possible without BetOnline. The holiday season is off and rolling with NFL in full stride, and the NBA and NHL hitting midseason form. BetOnline is your number one destination for all your sports wagering info. With up-to-the-minute sports wagering news, odds, trends, and predictions, BetOnline is the top spot for everything pro and amateur sports. And not just the big four, BetOnline has info available at your fingertips with both desktop and mobile access at any time for almost any sport that is played, from MMA to international soccer. Head to the BetOnline app today and remember to use our promo code BELIEVE, BLEAV, for your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. BetOnline, where the game starts. Look, you just dropped a video a few days ago about Jalen Brunson. And he is off. He had a very interesting start to the season, which you documented in the video. Really ice cold from inside the arc, super hot from three. He stayed hot from three, but the 2-point percentage is now coming up. And what is interesting to me, because after I was watching your video, I was like, damn, I didn't realize, like I knew, but I didn't really realize how absolute shit he was inside the arc to start the
Mm-hmm.
year. If you look at his numbers right now, he actually is like, I think he's a 58.4 true shooting. He's actually got the same effective field goal percentage that he had last season, which is wild considering
Mm-hmm.
right now he is shooting almost 6 percentage points worse from inside the arc than he did last year. Last year he was at 51.9. Right now he's at 46.1. I thought you did a really good job of just highlighting like why you're not worried about the 2 point percentages. And actually, if anything, like it's pretty encouraging that he's playing as well as he has
Yeah.
without that getting to the level he is. What have you seen? Like, what did you see when you were just kind of were breaking down his tape? And what do you think Knicks fans should be? What do you think is so encouraging? I guess about
Yeah.
his slow start from inside the arc.
So what I talked about in the video was like there's a whole level of scoring that he just hasn't been good at to start this season, which is at the rim. But he's been absolutely incredible at the other two levels, which is the mid range and the 3-point line. I was shocked when I looked at his mid range numbers. I knew he was a good mid range shooter, but like I think it was like 53%, and he was in like the 90, like I think it was like 98th percentile in attempts on long mid range jumpers, which I think cleaning the glass classifies as from 14 feet to just within the 3-point line. So for him to be like encouraging in those two areas is very much a sign of just how good he is at those two things. And when I watched him play, I think it's a testament to how technically sound he is as a shot creator. I think he has the best footwork of any point guard in the NBA. That was something that stood out to me, like his ability, like even on his long twos, like he was doing like some post mid range stuff, and there's definitely like, and this is something I've always felt about him. Brunson plays like he wants to be 6'8". Like that's always something I noticed with him. And like you notice that with his footwork and like the post stuff. But he was a
I think
good
that's a reason.
3-point shooter
Yeah, I mean, I
last
think
year,
that
but he's an elite one now.
Yeah, and to what you're talking about as far as like he plays like he's 6'8", I think that's the reason he dropped to where he did in the draft, because I remember when he came out, like a lot of the concern was like, okay, look, he's great at all this post scoring stuff in college and mid range work, but like, how is that going to translate at the next level against better athletes, bigger guys? And I mean, he's to your point, like teams put bigger guys on him all the time, and he just has a knack for creating space and working angles, and he's so patient. He's methodical. I think like like he does play like he's 6'8", and he's the only small guard I can really remember that can get off the volume he does in there against all kinds of defenders. We saw that last year in the playoffs, especially against Miami, when they're throwing everybody possible at him, and it just didn't matter. He was cooking everyone.
Yeah, and I was like, I think I was like pretty mixed when he signed with the Knicks, because like he was good in Dallas. But like anytime you see like I don't know if it was that much, but anytime you see like a contract extension or someone signs and that number starts with triple digits, your first thought is, wow, that's a lot of money. But looking at it now, like I think like you can maybe make an argument that like not only is he probably fairly paid, but you could probably make the argument that he's underpaid, because like there's this like I've watched the Knicks like my whole life, obviously, because they're in the Atlantic Division. They're always playing Boston. But like this is like the first time like I've watched the Knicks. I'm like, it feels different, probably since Carmelo was there. Where you just have this guy like I think people, it sounds cliche, but like just having that guy that like you can say, okay, you're gonna win us this game tonight is so important. Like if you have that guy that's like you give him the ball down the stretch and he can will your team to the win. Like it does so much, and that's why I think the Knicks went from like play-in ceiling to like a legit playoff team. Like I think maybe could have gone to the Eastern Conference Finals last year, and I think like they can at least threaten to get there. And it's incredible when the fact that it's Brunson, because like you don't see like what's it, 6'2"? Like he's not a
Yes,
big
yeah,
guard.
he's 6'1", I
So
think.
like
Yeah,
the fact that he's that guy, like it takes a special talent to do that. And I know like he hasn't had the best start to the season, but that's always something that impressed me with Trae Young was like he's 6'1" doing stuff that like guys that like 6'1" guys don't make the league.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and so like you find these smaller guards that can do that stuff. I'm like that's something I always will appreciate. And like the smaller guards are like some of my favorite players to make videos about, like the ones that are really just that effective because like of like I've seen great players in college that are 6'1", 6 feet, and they just don't translate to the NBA. And like those are guys that are like, okay, if they were 6'3", 6'4", 6'5", they make it. But like I think seeing like those truly special small guards is why it just really is something I like to highlight because I don't think people understand how hard it is. And with Brunson in particular, the way he does it with the post up, the footwork, and everything like that, like that's something that like, I always appreciate. And like, and I really wanted to highlight that. I think I highlighted that in an earlier video about him. But it's always something, even like, and if it's not the main talking point, I always want to talk about that just because of how special he is.
Yeah, Brunson actually. So he measured at the combine. He measured in at 6'1" without shoes, 6'2" and a quarter with shoes. And to your point, like about it's so hard if you're not like a certain size. Like you can just look at even in this class. So both him and Trae Young are in this class. Trae Young measured in at 6, and he's basically 6'1" and 3/4 with shoes on. But like Melton is in this class too. Melton's a guy
Yeah.
I've loved forever. He's 6'2", 2.5 without shoes, 6'3" and a quarter with shoes. Anthony Simons is in this class. So you actually do have like a bunch of dudes in this class that effectively like play bigger, right? And yeah, like DiVincenzo's in this class also. Lonnie Walker, who's having a really nice season
It's a
for Brooklyn.
really good class. It's
Yeah.
yeah.
SGA was in this class. SGA obviously
Uh,
much bigger than these guys in the
bigger,
league.
yeah.
Yeah. But it's pretty incredible to get those 4 guys. And obviously,
And
yeah, go ahead.
especially with like, even though he's not like big like them, like SGA is very unique in his own way because he also kind of plays like a big, like almost all of his points come at the paint.
Yeah. And he's a mid-range god now, and like
Yeah.
he's a special player. To bring it back to Brunson, like you know, so I mean, I guess bring it back to the Knicks in general, but like, so you did this Brunson video, and like, I honestly, I was going to ask you. It's funny you brought this up, but like when I was scrolling through your channel the other day, I was just like, man, this guy loves guards. Like, like every video is just like about a guard. But you also did a video, I believe, over the summer on Immanuel Quickley, and I don't want to do too much about like because that I mean I think you did highlight his defense in that, which
Yeah.
I think a lot of like people who are
Mm-hmm.
just catching up to like Immanuel Quickley are suddenly like, oh my god, he's good on defense too.
Yeah.
But like when you're watching him now, and like, do you see things that he's picked up from Brunson at all in things that he maybe didn't have before?
I don't know, like from a basketball perspective, because like I watch the Knicks a decent amount, but I don't watch them all the time. One thing I think he's picked up on is just playing with that intensity, and I maybe not like he never had to pick it up. Like I've been watching Quickle since he was in high school, and like he always just played with an edge to him, like most Kentucky guards do. But like one thing I noticed that picks up is like they both feed off of like that energy. And what I love about Quickly is like when Brunson comes out, like I'm not saying Quickly is Brunson on offense, but like he keeps that energy up, or even it like brings the energy up another level if they need it. So like I think like there's a connection there. Like they just like they're both competitive. Like obviously Quickly doesn't have like the winning pedigree in college that Brunson does. Like Brunson won 2 national titles and was like a
Who
starter
knows?
on both
Who
those
knows?
teams.
Quickly and Maxi might have if COVID didn't
Yeah.
happen.
That's something. If I did college stuff, I would definitely talk about that season because I do feel like we were robbed of one Maxi's chance to like prove that he was actually as good as to prove that he should have gone a lot higher than 21. Like that, he got robbed of that chance.
Yeah, but both those guys probably get picked way
Yeah.
higher than they ended up going.
Yeah, but like Quickly's defense, I talked about I think I talked about in the video. Like
Yeah, you
I think it's because he doesn't look like a defensive guard. When you think defensive guards, you think of like Drew Holiday, Marcus Smart, like even like DeAnthony Melton, like bigger, like built guys. Like Quickly, like I'm not saying he's like super skinny, but like he's definitely has like a more like lengthy frame, like in terms of like the long arms and like it just doesn't look like your traditional defensive like guard. So I think people don't realize how good he is, and I still see teams like try and test him, like he's not a good defensive player, and then they find out quickly. That's funny, but they find out like, oh, he's actually like really good, and I think because he's super quick, he's very fluid, uh, and the motor. Like motor is something I always preach. Like if you don't have a good motor, you will not be a good defensive player. Like you can have all the tools in the world. Like look at like you
can't
have to
run it.
buy in. You have to buy in on defense. Like look at Wiggins. Like Wiggins in Minnesota had every defensive all the tools to be a great defensive player, but it took him having to buy into a team winning the title to be like to reach his full potential on defense. And Quickly just has that motor, and his motor runs hard on both ends of the floor. And this, I can speak from experience from having Marcus on this team for like 9 years. Like just having that guy that brings that much energy, that can just win you games. And on top of that, like he does more than just, you know, like bring energy. Like he brings offensive value. He can be a shot creator. Like he's not like a 25-point per game scorer, but like he's like 6-man level, like a true 6-man of the year level, like offensive player. Like, and I don't mean like guys that just like get 20 points and tuck 20 shots off the bench tonight. Like, I mean like he's efficient, and brings like what you actually want in the 6-man on offense. And then defensively, like he's a legit like easily starter level. I still can't believe he didn't make all defense last year. Like that's something
Yeah.
that always will bother me.
Well, your boy robbed him of 6th man of the year too.
Yeah. We'll see how the playoffs go before I say that it paid off because we got Drew. We'll see how
but like to go back to what you actually touched on this in your video about Quickly, and I actually think this applies to him and Brunson, which is why I think they actually play really well together, even though you're giving up size. You talked about how Quickly is really good as a like he is the ideal guard in the sense of he's not SGA or one of these guys who you can just run an offense through, but he can have the offense run through him at times, and he's also capable of playing off the ball. And I think like Brunson doesn't get enough credit for his ability to toggle between both those roles too, and that's like why he was so good in Dallas playing off of Luka. Is that like he's great obviously as a scorer, and you can as we saw in the playoffs, he can dial up his usage and be like a 30+ point per game guy if you need him to be. But he has that ability to like, hey, I'm going to toss the ball to RJ or to Quick or to Randall, and I can space the floor and I can find open gaps and I'll make myself available and I'm still a threat. You have to respect me out here. But that's like a skill, like that's a skill. Playing off ball is a skill that not all guards have. I mean, you mentioned Trae Young early in the video or earlier in this pod that we were doing. And like, he's a guy that struggled with that throughout his career where he's just like not active off the ball. James Harden is one of the prime examples of this, Russell Westbrook. So like, what do you think it is, about these two guys that the Knicks have that like that they have this ability? Like what is that ability, if you want to like maybe expand on a little bit?
So I think that ability comes a lot from your prior experience. And so I look at let's go. I'll compare like Quickly to like Dre. Like Quickly, like he was like the man in high school, obviously. Like
all these guys are the man.
All these guys in high school, but he went to Kentucky and like he's playing with these great players. I think he was a 2-year guy, right?
Yeah. So I mean, to your point, I feel like that's probably something he struggled with, right? He probably got to Kentucky. And he's like, wait,
and
I'm not the man now. What's going on?
Yeah. So like he was on that team with like Tyler Hero, like PJ Washington, and he was on like the Quickly. Then he was on like the Maxi team as well. And because of that, he had to like focus on playing off ball, and he was like SEC Player of the Year, stuff like that. But like in Kentucky, you have to play off ball. Like that's just how their system works, and that's why you see a lot of the guards go lower than they should because they don't get to showcase everything they want to.
Even Maxey that year, they had Higgins running point, right? So like Maxey was playing off ball too, quite a bit, if I remember. Yeah.
Yeah. So like it forced him to learn that with Trae Young, also like easily the man in high school, like. And then he goes to college and he gets like this super high usage like role, and he was great. Like he's always going to be one of those guys I wish I appreciated more in the moment and didn't just focus on the fact he was like 6 feet tall and didn't hope on that as much because he was truly special in college, but like he's always been in that role. So like it takes it's harder for him to like probably adjust to that. And Brunson's like kind of like the same as Quickley, where he was on those great Villanova teams. He was on it when he was like the freshman starter that averaged like 7 points per game. He was on that team when they won National Player of the Year. So like his ability to play both roles is something that I look at and say, because he's had experience in both of those roles as like the complementary piece on one national title team, and then again winning like college National Player of the Year on another national title team. I think that has helped him like translate.
Yeah. I think it's interesting. Like both these guys played multiple years in college. They're both guys that dropped in the draft. I mean, in Brunson's, I mean, honestly, in both their cases, it was kind of interesting because Brunson seemed to drop because one, it was like some concerns about his play style, but two, it was just like he's been in college so long. Like, does he really have upside? You know,
I was shocked he fell out of the first round. I will say that.
He was what? I mean,
I can't believe he wasn't their second player drafted. And I like DiVincenzo, but like,
right.
I just watched Brunson. I'm like, he will translate just because like he's clearly. Sometimes it boils down to, do they have the work ethic? Do they have the motor? Are they talented enough? And he had all three of those things. But Quickley, like I remember, I didn't like the pick at the time. I thought Quickley was like a second round prospect in that draft. But clearly he's proven to be like a lottery level talent.
Yeah, well, so it's funny, like you mentioned this with Quickley because, this is the last year I did anything draft related. Like I stopped doing draft boards and everything after that year.
Yeah.
Shout out my final number one prospect overall was Killian Hayes. Look at that. But
You're
like
the only one.
but I had Quickley 20th on my board. I actually had him. I forgot who it was that year, but they compiled like everybody on draft Twitter's boards. And I had Quickley. I literally had Quickley higher than anybody on there. So when the Knicks picked him, I was like completely fine with that pick. I had Bane higher. So like if it's doing it by my rankings, I would have picked Bane. Like not trying to give myself credit because Bane's obviously I love Quickley, but Bane is he's also a great player in his own right.
But everyone but the NBA knew Bane was going to be good.
Yeah, it was a weird thing that happened with him.
Yeah.
But like I think even for me, like what I loved about Quickley when I just like watched him was I was like, okay, this guy understands how to play off the ball. He's a good defender. And I think like even like when you broke down his numbers in college, it was weird because he wasn't a good 2-point scorer, but he had really good ISO numbers. Like he was a good efficient ISO scorer in college even then too. And so I was like, I think there might be like some upside here that we just like haven't seen. But you look at him now and like, look, he's never going to be the type of, and again, you mentioned this in your video too, which was completely on point. He's never going to be this like high rim pressure type of guy. But you look at his growth now as a 2-point scorer. I mean, like he's taking now 54% of his shots inside the arc as a rookie that was at just under 48%. He's improved his percentages inside the arc. He's shooting this year from 10 to 16 feet. He's shooting 51.5%. His 2-point percentage overall this season is at 50.4. Like that's an insane number for him considering how bad he was inside the arc coming into the league. Last year he was at 52%. Like I don't think, and this is also applicable to Brunson in terms of just like, but the funny thing with the Brunson draft, by the way, is we also got Mitch Rob in that draft too. So he's a second round pick also. But like these two guys, like I don't think there is still maybe like an appreciation for like the growth that they've shown. And I think really quickly, maybe even more. I mean, I guess Brunson too, because Brunson's had to expand his game outside, right? Like he was always a good inside the arc scorer,
Yeah.
and now he's become really proficient as a 3-point pull-up guy,
Mhm.
and quickly had to develop his game inside, right? He didn't have that
Yeah.
at all, and it's just like the level that both these guys have improved. Their weaknesses coming in, and I think Quickly was a good defender in college, but if you told me
Mhm.
he'd be this good on defense, I would not have believed it. And Brunson's been playing better defense this year, but like I think it's, I mean, I don't think it's a reach to say like these are two guys who have really exceeded any expectations that you would have had on them coming out of the draft and entering the NBA. That like compared to a lot of other guards, that have come in over the years, it's kind of crazy to see how
Mhm.
much these two have developed.
Yeah, and I think like that's something that the 2020 draft taught me a lot about, like, so that was I think it's 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. I think it's like fourth or fifth draft I got recovered because I started in 2016. That was like really taught me it's like it's very possible to just get better
Mhm.
once you get to the NBA. And another point from that 2020 draft that, like, and probably the biggest example that taught me that was Halliburton. Like,
Yeah,
Halliburton could
yeah.
not finish in college. Like,
He couldn't
I
even shoot
remember
a
watching
puck
his
in
tape. I'm
college.
like, I don't think he's finished with his left hand once. And then, like, just to see the growth that he's made on top of guys like Quickley, it's really been, it really just taught me it's like these guys are still like, I know, like, it seems old, 21, 22 seems old when you get drafted because, they're like
What do
18,
you got?
19 now.
Right.
Um, but like that's still young in the grand scheme of an NBA career. Like I always say, like if Tatum has stopped improving at 21 years old, he'd be Tobias Harris. Like, yeah, like
Yeah.
so like that's the thing I always think about. Like if Giannis didn't stopped improving at like 21, like he's nowhere close to where he is. So like yeah, like you want to get the youngest guy possible, but it's also possible for like these older guys to get better, unless you're like Chris Duarte, like older than Jason Tatum when you get drafted. I think that's different, but like that's like outlier old compared to like again like I still like Brandon Miller was the guy for me in this class. People were talking about he was a bit older for a freshman.
He's 21, right?
Definitely, yeah, he was 21. I think he just turned 21 recently. But like people talking about like, oh, he's old. I'm like, I don't really think that factors that much into my evaluation, especially considering how much better he got from his senior year of high school to his freshman year at Alabama. Like the fact that he made that growth, I'm like, that shows me there's still a lot of room to grow here.
I mean, I've actually we've played the Hornets already 3 times.
Mm-hmm.
It's just crazy, but he's been pretty impressive, I think, to me every time I've seen him. As far like, just in terms of like player improvement, I think that's something that, I mean, everybody's guilty of this at various times, but
Mm-hmm.
like being older, like Bane is another guy. Like he came in, he was like 23, I think, when he was drafted. Like, and it was like the worry was like, well, this is all he is. And it's like, well, one, if this is all he is, that's still really fucking good. Like, who cares? But like he's gotten way better in terms of his
Mm-hmm.
ability to attack the rim and finish around
Yeah.
the basket.
And
So
he was
like,
always a good. He never made sense to why people didn't like him. I'm sorry about the lighting, by the way.
no, you're fine.
Um, it's something that kind of bothers me sometimes. I'm like, oh wow, but my blind, the blind's broke in my room, so I'm like, oh, I gotta deal with this now. But Bane was always like he was a good passer, like a really good passer, and not a great passer, like. Because considering like the passers that were in this class, like I wouldn't put him top tier, but like he was clearly a very good passer, and he was a good shooter. I'm like, that sounds like a recipe for a good NBA player that's 6'5".
Yeah. Yeah.
And
I mean,
it'll always bother me that like the Celtics like this passed on him like 3 times, and then
they
drafted
actually
him and
traded the
traded
pick,
him.
right? Yeah, they
Yeah,
traded the pick, right? That was like part of it. Was it Cantor they salaried them in that
they got
trade?
no, they and it'll always bother me. They traded the pick to get rid of Cantu.
Right. Yeah. That's
And
what
then they re-signed Cantu. I said, like, we just lost Desmond Bane for nothing.
um,
Um,
well,
that
let me
stuff
tell
always
you.
bothers me though, because I loved Maxey in that draft. I said it multiple times before. He was my number 4 prospect.
Yeah, I mean, I have my board somewhere, but I had him like
Yeah.
I think I had him at 8. So like when the
Yeah.
Knicks we took Obi at 8, and I was like,
Mhm.
I was fine with. I had kind of like I had landed somewhere in Obi where I was like, I don't really believe in him, but a lot of people who seem to know shit about the draft seem to like him. So I was like, I'll put him like I think I ended up putting him at like 12, and he was at the lowest end of the same tier that had Maxi and Vassell in. But Maxi and Vassell were like the two guys I really wanted at 8, but it's fine. I mean, that happens. But like if we didn't get Quickley, then I would probably be way more upset about it. Maxi's awesome. But like, I mean, not just getting Quickley, but also now having Brunson, where you're like, okay, look, like you didn't get Maxi, but you did get Quickley, and then you got Brunson, so like you're kind of okay at the guard positions.